Welcome, everyone. This is the Rules Committee meeting. We're sort of meeting out of sync, but we have some business to attend to. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. First item on our agenda is approval of the, I'm going to just get the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of October 16, 2017, and then we'll do, what? Strike that. We're going to go right to citizen comments. So first person on our agenda is Dan Joseph. Mr. Joseph, speaking to an item on the Rules Committee agenda.
Yes.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dan Joseph of 1510 Greenwood, and I wish to make a citizen's comment on citizen's comment. I'm sorry that's redundant, but that's what it is. The rules concerning citizens' public comment right now are wonderful, and I question any changes because before the council meeting, we have 3 committee meetings with no time to end. They can be open-ended as long as things are going on and the council meeting starts afterwards. So if those committee meetings continue on and on with this new change to have the debilation, excuse me, I'm having trouble with that word, of the council start late at 9:15, a lot of citizens would be very upset if they can't make their comments concerning things that are on the agenda for the meeting. Right now, it's pretty well spelled out. If there's 5 citizens making comments, 3 minutes each, 15 minutes total. More than 5, total 3 minutes each, and no more than 45 minutes. So they cut down each person's time to less than 3 minutes each, be it 2, 1, 30 seconds, whatever. But most people, citizens' comment concern things that are on the agenda, and having it after the council meets, it defeats the purpose of the citizens' comment totally. So I wish this discussion be tabled concerning proposing changing comments to end at a time that the committee meeting, the council meeting would not start late at 9:15. And also, whereas this committee right now, the first thing was citizens' comments at a regular council meeting. First we have mayor announcements, public announcements, city manager announcements, communication by the clerk, and finally public comments. All these things are pushing it back, so it will start later and later, and maybe we won't get everything in by 9:15. So please table this until it can be refined. Thank you.
Thank you. Carl Klein.
Good evening. Today I just noticed lines 8 on the Rules Committee agenda stating that you will discuss the length and timing of public comment. In the packet for the Rules Committee, there was no information on the on official guidelines for the city of Evanston or for any other city for public comment. So this leads me to believe that limited research has been performed. So I ask that you only start the discussion tonight and not vote on this item. You already have, as the other gentleman said, you have rules for city council, and you also have a public comment guide for the what you now call the BCC, boards, commissions, and committee. This is a great start. I think that you should also update it and, you know, and include some more information, maybe some information, because a lot of people get confused. I mean, like you did tonight, Chairwoman Rainey, you said,
I'm always
is
confused.
is this for the Rules Committee? Is this for the AP&W? Is this for planning and development? You know, so, you know, maybe a brief description of how to do public comment would be great. Also, moving public comment to the end of a meeting kind of seems backwards. If someone comes to public comment, they're usually coming to advocate for a topic or a matter that's on the agenda that's going to be voted on that night. So moving public comment to the end of a meeting after the vote has taken place seems kind of wrong and silly. So, again, I would just say, start the discussion and don't vote on public comment, any changes. And then also maybe you could move city council meetings to its own night so that when you have a start time, people know when that meeting is going to start and they don't have to wait 2-3 hours. Yeah, we have to respect your time as, citizens, but can you also respect us as citizens? We come for public comment and sometimes we have to wait hours and then we only have 30 seconds. That seems a little silly. Thank you.
And those are exactly the things I want to discuss tonight. So, works out perfectly. All righty. Hearing no other citizen comments. All right, so first item is number 4. Let's review the proposed 2018 City Council meeting dates. This was in your packet. I'm sure you all had a chance to look at it. Any issues with any of the dates? Can I have, yes.
I would like us to just talk about when we're going to have our quarterly discussion about affordable housing. Are we going to have that as a special, a topic for a special meeting, or are we going to do that as part of a regular council meeting? So at the October 30th Affordable Housing special meeting, we talked about trying to have our first sort of update towards the end of January. And we could either do it as part of our regular January 22nd council meeting, or do we want to schedule a council meeting at the end of January? Because there is a 5th Monday.
Madam Chair, Alderman Ravel, members of the committee, we had committed already, I think, to the 29th of January, which is that 5th Monday. If you'd like to codify it by putting it on this agenda, by the schedule, that'd be great. Otherwise, we would ask the council to hold a special meeting.
I have that on my calendar. Shall we codify it by putting, why don't
Right.
you move that?
Yep.
So we'll do that.
Okay, so I move to amend the proposed meeting dates to add January 29th as a special meeting to discuss affordable housing.
Second.
Okay.
1 second.
And then I guess in the same vein, the next quarter would be, once again, we have a 5th Monday in April. Or do we want to wait and see how it goes with our first
Let's
update?
set it at that meeting.
Okay, fine.
All right, all those in favor of amending to January 29 meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Any other comments on the remaining dates? It's kind of hard to do a whole year at one night. Yes. Mr. Mayor, do you have something? No? I can't hear you.
I said I have spring break and a conflict, but I'll just we'll have our mayor pro tem
Yeah.
that day. Yes.
And I'm unavailable every Tuesday for the most part. I work.
Okay.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, would the council prefer a Wednesday?
Oh,
We
no.
Yeah, I'm going to miss one of the meetings on the schedule. It's just, I think, we'll all miss one or two.
Yeah, Wednesday we have.
And members of the committee, we try, especially in January and February, not to have that 3rd Monday meeting if we don't need it. And so we will endeavor to not have those meetings, but we'd like the council to at least consider it and at least put it on the schedule.
All right, so I move that we adopt the schedule as amended.
There's no way everybody can be every place
We know.
at all times. So as we go along. All right, we're working on the sound system, we're working on everything, and it's just a little irritating, so just let's grin and bear it. All right, all those in favor of recommending to the City Council the 2018 City Council meeting proposed schedule?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. Moving right along. Next item is the housing and homeless, would somebody, Alderman Fleming, number 5, would you like to move that?
Sure, I move staff recommend to approval of ordinance 94-0-17, amending Title II, Chapter 4, City Council Code, changing the Housing, Homelessness, and Human Relations Commission back to the Housing and Human Relations Commission. It's for introduction and action.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of recommending this to the council, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Mr. Mayor, would you like to take the next item?
Item number
6.
is the resolution amending the council rules on the standing committee forums, right? Oops, sorry about that, everyone. Item 6 is about the standing rules, or the quorum rules for standing committees. Right now, that is set at 4. We have 5 people that are on these standing committees. This resolution is proposing to comply with Robert's Rule of Order, which would be a majority of the people need to be there. So 3 out of the 5 members would need to be there, and that would make quorum.
Second.
Except on the council.
Except on the council. This is for the standing committees of the council.
All right. Any discussion about that? Hearing none, that'll solve your problem on human services. All right. All those in favor of recommending this item to the council, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next is number 7. Alderman Ravel?
So was there
number
an
6.
update of our rules packet? Because I guess I don't have this.
Yeah. Amending council rules.
Future Rules Committee meeting schedule.
Future rules schedule, meeting schedule. I saw that.
And Madam Chair, members of the committee, Chair Rainey asked that we add this to the agenda for discussion. So there is no staff report for 6, 7.
The meeting schedule, though. The Future Rules Committee meeting schedule?
Yes. Alderman Rainey asked that the committee consider the current practice of the Rules Committee meeting at the call of the chair. For those of you who previously served on the council, the Rules Committee was a standing monthly meeting on the first Monday of the month. Prior to the Human Services Committee, a review of board, committee, and commission work, maybe 18 months ago, 2 years ago, came up with the idea to amend the council's rules so that the Rules Committee met instead at the call of the chair, and Alderman Rainey asked that it be added to the agenda this evening to revisit that.
And my point was, when needed, to fit it in on a night like this makes no sense to me. I mean, the Rules Committee is a standing committee of the council and should be on a Monday night and prior to the Human Services Committee makes perfect sense to me. If we don't need a Rules Committee meeting, we just won't have one. But to jam it in on a council night, it makes no sense. And so I would move that we return to the same night, the first Monday of when the Human Services Committee meets.
And Alderman Rainey, where are you going to go? So Human Services still starts at, I think I'd know that, we were just there last night.
6 o'clock.
7 or 6?
6.
So then would
But
we,
don't you start at 6 because Alderman Holmes wanted you to start at 6?
that I
I mean,
can't
is that a
remember.
preference of the committee?
I'm fine with the 6 o'clock start time. I'm just saying if we're going to now have a standing
Okay.
opening where we would do rules, I would assume we would start rules at 6 and then move Human Services 7. And if I
Because
remember
that's the way it
correctly.
was, right, yeah.
Yeah, just a little bit of confusion for some of the more hot topics that residents may come with. So I'm okay with it, just that for the new members, that there's a sense of awareness that means that we may run into some situations where we juggle those times around.
I think the Rules Committee would be willing to do that, and I don't think it would be every single month,
Okay.
I had my light on.
maybe even quarterly. Other members of the Human Services Committee,
Did I speak?
are you on?
I had my light on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't
But
see
you
it.
turned it off.
Oh,
Okay.
I didn't.
But I'm still here. Actually, I would prefer to leave it as it is, and mainly because I'm not on the Human Services Committee, and that would be adding something that I have to keep clear every single month. And it seems like we don't have this meeting a lot, but to have to kind of keep that clear on my calendar every month is,
But this does not make sense to me. I don't like the Rules Committee. This should not be happening tonight. Anyway, I'd like to keep this open or take a vote and see if people, how many people are on the Human Services Committee? 6?
4 of us.
4? Just 4?
5.
Yeah.
5, sorry.
5. Well, I'm not on it, and I wouldn't mind coming once every quarter.
We're there anyway.
I mean,
so
it's
just-
not the end of the world, but it just, it seems to be working fine as it is, honestly. I haven't noticed a great imposition on us.
Well, because we don't meet, and things,
At P&D. P&D stuff.
yeah.
I mean, it just seems to make sense to do it as needed as opposed to scheduling it and canceling it.
Well, I'd like to move that we have it on the night of Human Services and that it be fit in when possible,
If needed.
when needed.
When needed.
When needed.
Yeah.
I'd like to move that on the night of Human Services. If I could have a second. Just to have a vote, up or down.
I'll second for discussion or voting purposes.
Right. All right, yes.
So Alderman Rainey, members of the committee, with the plan, we would need to go back and amend the council rules. So the idea would be that the Rules Committee meets at 6 o'clock, Human Services meets at 7 o'clock, and then if there's not a Rules Committee meeting, then we go back to 6 o'clock for Human Services. That's what the rules used to read. So that we would then have to change the time of each Human Services meeting based on if there was a Rules Committee meeting or not.
Yeah.
Well, I would say a Rules Committee meeting quarterly. That's what I would say. I just think this is ridiculous.
So you're amending your motion?
I don't care. Let's hold this and give it some thought.
Okay.
But I'm certainly not in favor of doing this. It just makes the Rules Committee so unimportant when it really is not. So I'll hold it. Let's move on. Discussion of aldermanic attendance at executive sessions of boards, commissions, and committees, including Board of Ethics. This is a item I placed on this agenda and really has to do more with the Board of Ethics having executive sessions. And my concern about why does the Board of Ethics have executive sessions? And what are they all about? How is it that the Board of Ethics, and I guess it's for you, Henry, why does the Board of Ethics have executive sessions and what allows them to do that?
Well, excuse me, Madam Chair, Committee, Henry Ford, Assistant City Attorney. Well, take one of the hypotheticals of if a Board of Ethics is looking at a personnel.
No, because the Board of Ethics, here's how this comes up. The Board of Ethics has been very active lately in investigating aldermen. That's how this has come up, okay? And the Board of Ethics has investigated almost every alderman and currently is investigating aldermen. And I personally asked to be allowed to attend an executive session of the Board of Ethics. And I was told, absolutely not, you cannot do that. An alderman is not personnel, okay? I want to know, having to do with aldermen and having to do with issues having to do with their jurisdiction, what allows the Board of Ethics to have an executive session? What permits that?
So looking at your situation, let's take it step by step.
Okay.
Okay. Council members have a right to inspect records of other committees. I mean, that's under the city, that's under our city code, okay? But if you're looking at a standing committee that's looking at issues of fairness and partiality, there could be the argument that having an alderman there could potentially influence the discussion for a citizen committee. So I think we would determine that it would be based on the actual committee in and of itself to make the determination as to those rules. If the Board of Ethics, my understanding, has its own rules, that's one of those committees that has its own rules written up and determined. So looking at their rules and looking at their determination, it would seem consistent with that they can make the determination to bar you. Now, if it's a public meeting, obviously they cannot. If you wanted to review records of the same thing that the board has reviewed, you have the right to do that under the city code. But to be present at the meeting, I think that's a determination for the Board of Ethics to make consistent with their rules and determinations that was written up by them.
But why would the Board of Ethics be allowed to go into executive session to determine whether or not an alderman, what is it about a case that would allow them to go into executive session to discuss an alderman?
Well, I mean, under the Open Meetings Act, there's the exceptions for executive session to go into closed meetings. So obviously, they would have to comply with those exceptions to go into a closed meeting. So
What
it's
is-
sort of
what
open,
is it?
It's open-handed hypothetical. Like, if you give me a specific, I can maybe
So
answer
the
it.
normal closed session would be litigation, personnel, and real estate. So
But we're
what
none of
then-
those. We're
Yeah,
none of
that's
those.
To your point. So then what allows? Well, I mean, you can read the. You're right. There's.
I mean,
right.
there's a
But the point
laundry
that she's
load of
making
things that
is
are on there.
what is the specific language that then says they're able to go into executive session if they're not necessarily discussing something that's legal, something that's personnel matters, or whatever else is spelled out, is what I hear Alderman Rainey asking.
Alderman Wilson?
Right, and there's a list of, same thing, when we go into executive session, I read the motion, and I have to identify the specific basis under the code. So presumably, that body or any other board or commission would have to identify the specific basis under the code, and say, okay, here's why we're going into executive session. So that should be done. I wasn't at the last meeting,
don't
so
do
I don't know
that.
what they did, but,
They don't.
they ought to have, and hopefully they did, but I wasn't there, so I can't speak to it.
Right, and the section that Alderman Wilson is referring to is 5 ILCS 120-2, C, that lists all the exceptions for closed sessions under the Open Meetings Act, and it's from C1 through C34, okay? So there's about 34 items under the Open Meetings Act that are delineated that a open meeting can go into a closed session with a valid exception. Now, I don't know what was told to you at the time or what was done at that Board of Ethics meeting. I cannot speak as to what took place at that time. But if they make the motion consistent with what you all have done with making motions to go into closed session, and if it's one of the exceptions determined under the Open Meetings Act, then that would be consistent with the same.
But that the people we have placed on the Ethics Committee could not be fair, given the presence of an alderman, that's pretty feeble. We need to reconsider who we put on the Board of Ethics. I mean, that is pretty feeble. I don't believe that. Those people look like they're very strong and very committed to their job. And that seems like not a good reason.
I wouldn't
So-
disagree with you there.
Huh?
I wouldn't disagree with that, but
Yeah.
we do have the exceptions under the Open Meetings Act that I can't speak as to what took place there at the time.
All right, well, I think, given that this is on the agenda and I ask that it be placed here, I would like a really good opinion on those reasons and why an alderman cannot be present in executive sessions. One time, there was a ruling that an alderman could be present in any executive session of any city business, of any board or commission.
Okay, we will look into
I'd
it.
like to know more about that.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes, Alderman Wilson?
We're good.
Okay. All right. The next item on the agenda is, anybody else have any comments about that?
No.
Discussion on the length and timing of public comment. Nobody else, just those of you who are so upset about this. I'm the one who put this on the agenda. And I've asked that we discuss starting council meetings no later than 9:15. And I have no disagreement with all this other extraneous stuff, for example, awards, ceremonies, et cetera. I have asked many, many times that the city manager place awards and ceremonial matters on the off nights, the third Monday, having that kind of thing done then, special order of business at the end. But my arguments are that 30 seconds is absolutely meaningless to the council. It means nothing to hear somebody speak for 30 seconds. It also is absolutely meaningless to have 40 people speak at planning and development, have those same 40 people come and speak at the city council meeting and say exactly the same thing. So the reason you get 30 seconds at the council meeting is because you're defeating your own purpose of just piling on the same thing. Yes, you're entitled to speak all you want, for as long as you want, I guess, but you are asking a council to behave intelligently and give serious thought to something we're not even allowed to speak to until 11 o'clock at night. This council is never allowed to talk to one another as a group until after you all are quiet, and that's at 11 o'clock at night sometimes, when there are development issues. It absolutely defeats and flies in the face of reasonable debate. We can't have a debate about things. Sometimes I hear criticism, the council didn't even discuss it. They just voted yes. They just voted yes. It was on the consent agenda. That's because there's no time. It just seems to me that it would make more sense to allow us to conduct city business at a reasonable hour. Yes, everybody's important, but we're the ones that the viciousness and the hatred that was spewed after the last development was approved was beyond the pale. And we didn't really get to tell why we voted the way we voted. And the reason was it was too late, and the debate of the residents went on so long, we just couldn't do it. So if only we could have talked, if only we could have had a couple of nights where maybe citizen comment didn't even happen, and you could have had council comment. Imagine. What an interesting concept. Council comment. And I know that the mayor has struggled with this, and he tried to fix it one night, and it just didn't work. So that's, I don't know what the answer is. Maybe just to continue like we're doing. I realized that I would get pushback and that it would be anti-citizen, and, anyway. All right, Alderman Suffredin, then I think this is the mayor. No, Alderman Fleming, and then Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is it possible to move the front end stuff, the awards, to one particular meeting a month?
The third,
either the
I've
first.
asked that it be sent to the third meeting.
Okay, if we did that on the third meeting, for example, and then Mr. Klein made a good point. It is counterproductive to have public comment on items that we're voting on after we voted on them.
Oh, of course not.
Is it possible to do public comment related to agenda items under the same rules that we have now on the front end, total of 45 minutes, and then, I guess, freestyle, whatever you want to talk about. If you want to stick around to the end of the meeting and do it after call of the wards, we could do it that way. One thing that Mr. Klein said, which I respectfully disagree with a little bit, is that people have the opportunity to come, make public comment, and leave. We're here for the duration either way. So I feel like if we had the non-agenda item public comment after the meeting, people would still have an opportunity to be heard, or they could come back when it is on the agenda. We could get that 45-minute deadline met, meet earlier, and especially if we take some of the front-end stuff and put it at one of the meetings, either first or third, whichever. And that's all I've got.
Let's see, Alderman Fleming and then Alderman Fisk.
So I would appreciate that if we moved the proclamations and so on and so forth to one set night, the third meeting. I think public comment, again, as everyone said at the beginning, makes more sense. I do think that there is something to Alderman Rainey's point in terms of if you come for P&D or whatever and you make your comment and then you come at City Council and make your comment, that's, within your right to do, but you just have to understand that it could be shorter because there might be people who want to speak to something that's only at City Council, and so they didn't speak at P&D. And so I do think that moving forward, I appreciate everyone who has come out to speak, but if particularly kind of groups that are advocating for the same things, it might be beneficial for you all to kind of structure your comments a little bit better so we can hear more of what you have to say versus hearing 30 seconds from 20 people. We kind of can get the gist now of who's together. You come with your signs, we can read all that. So it might even just benefit you if you have some main points to make, to work together to make those points instead of making little sound bites. But I would love to have those special, those kind of standalone proclamations and such on one night because we are here late. And I do find it very hard when it's 11 o'clock and I'm being asked to remember what my thoughts were from, the weekend when I read the packet and adding in what you said and all that. So I think you have to understand also, we did run for these positions, but we are human and it gets hard to make good decisions late at night, and we don't want to make bad decisions just because we're tired. And so I think if we can kind of work together a little bit more to make this happen, it will be better for the city.
Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, everyone has a right to come and speak. I mean, that's the bedrock of our democracy is that folks can come and stand here at the microphone and tell us what they think about us and what the work that we're doing and the votes that we're going to be taking that night. It does cause a problem, though, when there are a couple hundred people out there, everyone saying the same thing. But I'm going to defend their right to stand up at the microphone and say that. So I'm going to throw something else out. When we have, I'm a little concerned about the third, pushing everything to the third meeting. If we don't have anything else on that meeting, maybe we just do proclamations and go home. I mean, that seems almost to be a waste of time. So I'd like you to think about, what if we came on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock and did public comment on Saturday morning and let me just say this, and did no public comment on Monday night before council, but started council at a specific time, for example, 8 o'clock. So we start our business at 8 o'clock. Everybody's laughing.
Yeah.
No.
Never.
No.
Okay, I'm just saying, if you want to solve the problem, that's the way of doing
The
it.
third Monday is such a wonderful Monday. We can accomplish so many other things. We could also hear off-topic citizen comment on that night.
I know, and we had staff reports and everything on that third Monday, and it got to be a bit.
capital projects, things like that?
I'm sure we can fill the time. That's not the question, but,
We always have,
well, and then we got away from doing that, and that was actually kind of nice. I'm just throwing it out there.
nobody caught it.
Good try, though.
Nice. Alderman Wilson?
I value my sleep, I think, just as much as everybody else does. But a couple of observations. We all recognize a thoughtful comment when it comes before us, and I think we all appreciate those. And we all recognize not thoughtful comments as well. And what I don't want to do is, because of the not thoughtful commentary, to in any way deter somebody who is coming, whether it's for an agenda item or not. You know, we get, from time to time, we get very thoughtful comments that might not relate to an agenda item. But it's important for us to get that kind of feedback on an ongoing basis. As far as the committees go, I don't think we have time limits on the committee public comment. Is that correct?
It's up to the chair.
So I think that's,
3 minutes, standard.
I'm about to cut off committee member comments.
not even close to 3 minutes. But I think that's where we've kind of run into some problems lately, is the committees ended up taking an extraordinary amount of time. So maybe entertaining the idea of setting some parameters on the committees as far as the public comment, you know, the total time window, that might be something that can kind of get us into that council window a little sooner. You know, if you're in the public and you want to hear what we're talking about, two things. You know, don't hijack too much of the time if you're not saying something thoughtful. And the other thing is stick around and make sure you listen to what we're discussing. You know, we all see there are plenty of occasions where we'll have dozens and dozens of people here who come and speak, and they leave. And I recognize, you know, they might have places to go, but I hope that they're going home or they're following up and they're watching the videos and seeing what gets said, because as much as our local press does cover things, you know, they've got, you know, a couple inches of text, and we might talk about something for 20 minutes or half an hour, and that just doesn't get captured. So I think it's important to, if you care about something, you actually have to inform yourself instead of just, you know, looking at the Facebook page.
Mr. Mayor, would you like to comment on this at all? Anybody else? I don't see any other lights.
Sure, I'll say a couple things. You know, I think that as we're running public comment, I have been for the last 7 months, that people are pretty respectful of whatever the divided time becomes. That one meeting where 81 people spoke and they each got 30 seconds, I think we probably averaged about 45 seconds. But I personally feel that even with the, you know, 30 seconds, 45, say on average that people took, they were able to get their point of view across. Even though it was a short period of time, I think you still can do that, and you don't necessarily need the whole 3 minutes. I'd like to think about, I don't think we're going to have the solution tonight, but I would like to think about this idea that Alderman Fisk threw out there, though, about is there another way that we can re-envision how we do public comment? I do get concerned as sort of the presider of this that you know, it's 10 o'clock at night or it's 11 o'clock at night before we are getting to deliberations of this council. And this is your elected body here in Evanston to represent everyone. And I think it is important that this group of people have the opportunity to really have some time and articulate their thoughts on different issues that are before this council. So I think that I'm not, I wasn't laughing, Alderman Fisk, at your suggestion. You know, maybe it's, you know, Saturday morning doesn't work for people. Maybe it's a videotape thing. Maybe it's, you know, we accept videotape comments that become, you know, public comments. Or maybe it's, you know, me sitting up here for 3 hours someday and during the weekday, and people can come here and they can present, and it's on TV for anyone to see. And, you know, and we have rules, and people can come forward. I don't know, you'd have to go to the attorneys to find out whether if you did something like that, we could then preclude or not have public comment at the actual public meeting. Because I think the way the rules work is whenever you have a public meeting, you have to have some time for public comment. There is flexibility to the governing body, whether that time is at the beginning, whether that time's at the end, whether it comes, throughout it. So those are just some thoughts that are running through my mind, Chairman or Chairwoman Rainey.
Very interesting, very interesting. Alderman Braithwaite.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I think this is a really good conversation for us to have, and I hope that folks are paying attention to it. And to Alderman Fisk, the reason that I sort of shrugged my shoulders at that idea, for some of us who sit behind the dais, and we all do the same thing, I just want to remind the public that some of us hold monthly ward meetings, which are opportunities to speak on agenda items. Some of us hold neighborhood and block club meetings in addition to that. So the thought of creating yet one other meeting as a whole body, to me, I'm pushing it to the max. So I think that people should keep that in mind, and we all get folks who come from different wards to our ward meetings as well, depending on what the agenda item is. So I thought it was important to share that, especially to the mayor, and I'm a little bit concerned about how we would go about carving out time for our whole group to come together for citizens' comments. So I just wanted to explain that to you. Yeah.
I mean, if I couldn't get any interest in having a meeting before another meeting, to have people come out on a whole different day,
Yeah.
it seems a little difficult. All right, so I think the conversation has been started. I think it's an important thing to have, because it seems that what we've got going on right now is it's a little, mostly not working on, given some of the issues that we have coming up and that we've just been through. Alderman Ravel.
So I gather that we're going to be continuing this conversation, and then perhaps in the meantime, though, we could take a look at the rules for public comment at our various committee meetings and see whether there's an opportunity there to, if we don't already have some kind of a time limit there, make sure that we have one in an effort to get through those committee meetings in a more timely fashion.
Well, I know Administration Public Works does not have a time problem with overage of public comment.
Pretty generous with time.
I mean, we spend a lot of money, we probably should, but it doesn't seem that we have a lot of angry people coming and talking to us, or even happy people. All right, so aldermanic referral, which was mine, regarding moratorium on non-owner occupied vacation rentals. There was some interest on that. I think maybe we should just refer it to Administration Public Works. Is that where it should go, or should it go to P&D?
P&D.
It should go to P&D?
Chair Rainey, is the committee then asking that we would draft such a moratorium? And have
I don't think so.
Or just
I
for
think we
discussion?
just discuss it, yeah.
Okay,
just
very good.
discuss it, yeah. Because I think there's all sorts of levels of this, and there's many pros and many cons on both sides. I'd just like to hear a discussion.
Okay.
All righty. Any other business that anybody wants to talk about? Any items they'd like to see on a next Rules Committee meeting? No?
Good
All right,
discussion.
move to adjourn?
Yep.
Could we start our council meeting like at 1:15? Because we've been sitting here since 6.
Yep.
Some of us have. Okay. All right, meeting's adjourned.